I didn't mean to hear it. That's the thing that's been stuck in my head. Not just what she said, but the way it slipped out like it wasn't supposed to land anywhere. Stop being ridiculous. It's just one night with my crush. I need this to prove I'm still. Her voice trailed off after that. Not quiet, exactly. Just unfinished. Like even she didn't know how to end it. I was under the reception desk at the time, half on my back, trying to fix a loose wire that kept killing the card machine at the hotel. The place wasn't fancy, but it pretended to be. Polished floors, neutral tones, fake plants that collected dust in corners no one checked. I'd been coming there on and off for months, doing small repair jobs. Enough that the staff stopped noticing me. Except her. I stayed still when I heard the words. Not because I was trying to eavesdrop, more like my body decided before I could. The screwdriver in my hand hovered midair. There was a pause. Then a man's voice, tight and low. I couldn't make out all of it. Just something about, "You're not serious, and this isn't normal." She didn't answer right away. I heard the faint click of her heels shifting on the floor, slow, deliberate. When she spoke again, her tone had changed. Softer, but not weaker. "It's not about him," she said. "It's about me." That landed differently. A few seconds later, footsteps moved away. Fast. Uneven. The kind of walking that isn't quite leaving, not quite staying either. And then it was just quiet again. The hum of the air conditioner. The distant clatter of dishes from the restaurant. I should have gone back to work. Finished the job, packed up, left. Instead, I stayed there longer than I needed to, staring at the underside of the desk like it might explain something. "Is it fixed?" Her voice was closer now, right above me. I startled a little, hit my head lightly against the wood. "Yeah, I mean almost. Just give me a second." I slid out from under the desk and sat up, brushing dust off my shirt. And there she was. I'd seen her before, of course. You don't miss someone like her. Mid-40s, maybe a little older. Not in a way that made you count. More like it gave her weight, presence. She wore simple things, but they sat on her like they belonged there. Today it was a cream blouse, sleeves rolled just enough to show her wrists, and dark trousers that somehow looked sharper than anyone else's in the room. Her hair was tied back loosely, a few strands falling out near her face. Not messy, just unbothered. But it was her expression that caught me off guard. Not upset. Not exactly. Just somewhere else. "You okay?" I asked before I could stop myself. She looked at me like she hadn't expected that question. Like it didn't fit. Then she smiled, small, polite, the kind people use when they don't want to get into it. "Card machine," she said, nodding toward the desk. "That's what matters, right?" "Right," I said, even though it clearly wasn't. I reached under again, tightened the last connection, and stood up properly this time. "Try it now." She picked up a random card from the counter, slid it in. The machine beeped, screen lighting up like it was supposed to. "There," I said. "All good." She didn't move right away, just stood there, holding the card, looking at the screen like she was waiting for something else to happen. "Thank you," she said finally. Her voice was steady now. Too steady. "No problem." Another pause. Not awkward exactly. Just stretched. Then she did something small. Almost nothing. She brushed a bit of dust off my shoulder. Light. Quick, like she hadn't meant to. "Careful," she said. "You're going to start blending in with the furniture." I laughed a little too quickly. Wouldn't be the worst thing. Her eyes stayed on me for a second longer than they needed to. Not intense. Not soft either. Just there. Then she stepped back, already turning away. "I'll call if it breaks again," she said over her shoulder. "Yeah," I replied. "I'll be around." She walked off, heels steady again, like whatever had happened before I saw her had been folded away somewhere out of reach. But it didn't feel gone. I finished packing up, slung my bag over my shoulder, and left through the side exit. I should have forgotten it. People say things. Fights happen. It wasn't my business. Still, all the way home, one part of it kept replaying. Not the argument. Not the words I wasn't meant to hear. Just that moment. The way her hand paused on my shoulder for half a second too long. And how, for some reason, it didn't feel like an accident. I wasn't supposed to be back so soon. Usually, jobs like that came weeks apart. Something breaks, I fix it, and we both forget each other exist until the next problem shows up. But 2 days later, my phone buzzed with the hotel's number. Card machine's acting up again, the receptionist said. Can you come by? It didn't sound urgent. More like an excuse. I told myself that on the drive over. Didn't fully believe it, but I kept saying it anyway. She was at the front desk when I walked in. Same blouse, different color. This one a muted blue. Her hair was down today, resting just past her shoulders, slightly uneven like she'd run her hands through it one too many times. There were faint shadows under her eyes I hadn't noticed before. Or maybe they hadn't been there. She looked up when the door chimed. Oh, she said, almost like she hadn't expected me specifically. That was fast. Wasn't far. I replied, setting my bag down near the counter. What's it doing? She hesitated. That was the first thing I noticed. Her fingers tapped lightly against the desk, then stopped when she realized she was doing it. It's not really broken, she admitted. It just froze for a minute earlier. I glanced at the machine. It was on, screen steady, no error messages. So it's working now. Seems like it. Another pause. I nodded slowly. Right. Neither of us moved to end the conversation. I crouched down anyway, opening the panel like I had something important to check. The silence stretched again, but this time it felt different. Thicker, like it had weight. You don't have to pretend to fix it, she said after a moment. There was something almost apologetic in her voice. I looked up at her. I'm not pretending. I'm verifying. That got a small laugh out of her. Not loud, just enough to break the edge. It changed her face when she laughed. Softer, less controlled. For a second, she looked younger, not in age, but in the way she let it happen without thinking. Then it faded, like she caught herself. I went back to the machine, tightening a screw that didn't need tightening. You always come this fast, she asked. Depends who's calling. I don't know why I said that. It just came out. She didn't answer right away. When I glanced up again, she was watching me, not surprised, not amused. Just measuring something. That's a dangerous habit, she said quietly. What is? Showing up. I leaned back slightly, resting my arm on my knee. Didn't realize it was. It is, she said. For some people. There it was again, that thing she did. Saying something simple, but leaving the real meaning somewhere just out of reach. I stood up, brushing my hands together. Well, everything looks fine. If it freezes again, it's probably just the system lagging. She nodded, but her attention wasn't on the machine anymore. Can I ask you something? She said. Sure. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Her hand moved to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, but she stopped halfway, letting it fall back into place. It was such a small thing, but it didn't feel small. Never mind, she said. It's not important. It sounded important. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes this time. Do you ever? She started again, then exhaled softly. Do you ever do something just to remind yourself you still can? I frowned a little. Like what? She shook her head, almost to herself. Forget I asked. I don't think you meant that. For a second, I thought she might actually answer. Her gaze dropped to the counter, fingers tracing an invisible line along the edge. I noticed then, her hands weren't steady. Not shaking exactly. Just not still. I used to be very certain about things, she said finally. About who I was. What I'd do. What I wouldn't do. And now, she let out a breath that sounded too quiet to carry what it held. Now I'm not sure that version of me even existed. I didn't know what to say to that. So I didn't. The silence that followed wasn't awkward this time. It felt shared. Then a guest walked up to the counter, breaking it. She straightened immediately, posture shifting back into place like a switch had flipped. Just a moment, she told them, voice smooth again. I picked up my bag. I'll let you get back to it, I said. She nodded, already halfway turned away. But as I started toward the door, I felt it. That same pull from before. Hey, she said suddenly. I stopped, turning back. She was looking at me again. Not through me this time. At me. Thank you, she said. For what? She hesitated. Just for a second. Then, softer, for not asking the wrong questions. I held her gaze a moment longer than I should have. Yeah, I said. I'm trying to figure out the right ones. Something flickered in her expression. Brief, almost gone before it formed. I left after that. But the whole way home, one thought kept circling back, refusing to settle. If she didn't want the wrong questions, Why did it feel like she was hoping I'd ask anyway? It happened on a night that didn't feel like it belonged to anything. Not work. Not routine. Not even chance, really. The power went out in half the hotel just after 9. Not a full blackout. Just enough to throw everything off balance. The hallway lights dimmed to emergency strips. The elevator froze between floors, and the front desk system went dead again. They called me, of course. I almost didn't pick up, but I did. By the time I got there, the place felt different. Quieter than usual, like the building itself was holding its breath. A few guests lingered near the lobby, murmuring, but most had retreated to their rooms. She was behind the desk again, lit by a single lamp someone had dragged over. The softer light changed everything. Took the edge off the room. Took the edge off her. "You're becoming a regular solution," she said when she saw me. I set my bag down. "You say that like it's a bad thing." "I'm still deciding." There was a faint smile, but it didn't last long. I got to work, checking the panel behind the desk, tracing the wiring. It wasn't complicated, just overloaded circuits, probably. Something I could fix in an hour, maybe less. She didn't leave. That was new. Usually, she kept moving, always doing something. Tonight, she stayed close. Not hovering, just present. Leaning lightly against the counter, arms crossed, watching me in that quiet way she had. "You don't have to stay," I said after a while. "I know." She didn't move. I kept working. A few minutes passed like that, the silence stretching but not breaking. I could hear small things, the faint tap of her ring against the counter, the slow rhythm of her breathing, the soft shift of fabric when she adjusted her stance. "You always this calm?" she asked suddenly. "Not really. You look like you are." I shrugged, not looking up. Looks can be misleading. That I believe. There was something in her voice when she said it. Not sharp, just tired. I glanced up then. She'd let her guard slip a little. Shoulders slightly slumped. One hand pressed flat against the counter like she needed the support more than she wanted to admit. Her eyes weren't on me anymore. They were somewhere else entirely. "You should sit," I said. "I'm fine." "You don't look fine." That got her attention. Her gaze snapped back to me, not angry, just caught. For a second, I thought she might push back. Say something dismissive, deflect it like she usually did. Instead, she exhaled. Slow. Uneven. "Okay," she said quietly. She moved around the desk and sat on one of the low chairs nearby. Not gracefully, just carefully, like she was suddenly aware of her own weight. I finished what I was doing and stood up, wiping my hands on a cloth. "Power should stabilize now," I said. "Give it a minute." She nodded, but didn't look at the desk. She was watching me instead. "Do you ever get tired of fixing things?" she asked. "Sometimes. And when you can't?" I hesitated. I usually leave before that part. Her lips pressed together slightly. Not quite a smile. "Must be nice." "It's not always a choice." She looked down at her hands then. Her fingers were restless again, tracing the same invisible line along her palm. "Sometimes staying is worse," she murmured. I didn't ask what she meant. I sat down on the chair across from her without really thinking about it. Close enough that I could see the fine lines near her eyes, the way her lashes clumped slightly like she'd rubbed them earlier. Too close, maybe, but neither of us moved. The silence shifted again. Not empty this time. Charged. Like something was building underneath it, waiting for one of us to make the wrong move. "Can I tell you something?" she said. Her voice was quieter now. Not guarded. Just low. "Yeah." She leaned back slightly, studying me like she was deciding if I was real enough to hear it. "I almost did something today," she said. I didn't interrupt. I thought about it all morning. Planned it, even. Told myself it didn't matter. She let out a small, humorless breath. I even believed that for a while. "What stopped you?" Her eyes flicked up to mine. And stayed there. "You did," she said. The words landed softer than I expected. But heavier. I frowned slightly. I wasn't even there. "I know." That made it worse somehow. The lights flickered above us then, brighter this time. Power stabilizing. Neither of us looked away. Her hand shifted on the armrest, just enough that it brushed mine where it rested between us. It could have been accidental. Probably was. But she didn't pull back right away. And neither did I. I felt it. That split second where something decides whether it's going to happen or not. My fingers twitched slightly, like they were about to close the distance. Like I was about to, I didn't move. That's the part that stayed with me later. Not what almost happened, but what didn't. My hand stayed where it was, close enough to hers that I could feel the heat of her skin, but not touching anymore. Like something invisible had pulled the space back between us. She noticed. Of course she did. Her fingers shifted slightly, then curled in toward her palm, like she was taking something back without making it obvious. The movement was small, controlled, but it changed the air between us. The lights above settled into a steady glow. The hum of electricity came back, low and constant. Normal, again, except it wasn't. She looked at me differently now. Not guarded, not distant, just aware. "What are we doing?" she asked. Her voice wasn't sharp. It wasn't accusing. It sounded like she was asking herself, and I just happened to be there. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "Fixing a power issue." She gave a quiet, almost disbelieving exhale. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "That thing where you make it smaller than it is." I leaned back slightly in my chair, running a hand over the back of my neck. "I don't know what you want me to say." "I don't know either." That came out quicker, honest in a way she hadn't been before. Her eyes dropped to the floor between us, the space that had almost disappeared a minute ago. "This isn't normal," she said. "No. It's not appropriate. No. And it's not going anywhere good." I hesitated. Probably not. Each answer felt like it was closing something, one step at a time. Like we were both carefully dismantling something we hadn't even fully built yet. But neither of us stood up. She let out a slow breath, her shoulders rising and falling with it. "I have a life," she said. "A very structured one. It works because I don't question it too much." I nodded, even though she wasn't looking at me. "And then you show up," she continued, her voice quieter now. "And suddenly I'm noticing things." "What kind of things?" She shook her head, a faint, frustrated motion. "That I'm tired," she said. "That I say yes to things I don't even think about anymore. That I—" She stopped herself. I waited. Her lips parted slightly, like she might finish the sentence. But instead, she looked up at me again. "And you just stand there," she said. "Fixing things. Not asking for anything. Not complicating it." There was something almost accusing in that. Or maybe it just felt that way because I didn't have a defense. "I'm not trying to complicate anything," I said. "I know. That's kind of the point." Her gaze held mine, steady now. "And that's the problem." The words sat there between us. I shifted forward slightly, resting my elbows on my knees. "Then tell me what you want me to do." She didn't answer right away. Her fingers tightened slightly around the edge of the chair, knuckles paling just a little. "I don't think you should come back," she said finally. It wasn't harsh. It sounded careful, like she'd chosen the words hours ago and was only just now saying them out loud. I nodded once. "Okay." The agreement came too easily, even to me. Something in her expression flickered at that. Not relief. Not quite regret either. "Okay," she repeated. "You said it's not going anywhere good. And you just accept that. What else is there?" Her eyes searched my face, like she was looking for something I wasn't giving her. "I thought you'd argue," she said quietly. "I don't think that would help." "No," she murmured. "It wouldn't." Another silence. Heavier this time. Final in a way the others hadn't been. She stood up slowly, smoothing her blouse like she needed something to do with her hands. "I'll call someone else next time," she said. "Yeah." I stood too, picking up my bag. The movement felt mechanical now, detached. I walked toward the door, each step too loud against the floor. My hand reached for the handle. "Wait." I stooped. Didn't turn around right away. "What?" I said. There was a pause behind me. A long one. When I finally turned, she was still standing by the chair. Not closer. Not further away. Just there. Her composure had slipped again. Barely. But enough. "For what it's worth," she said, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. "I wasn't going to do it." I frowned slightly. "Do what?" Her eyes held mine. "That thing I told you about," she said. "Earlier." The room felt too still. "I was going to walk away," she continued. I had already decided. I swallowed. "Okay." She nodded faintly, like that confirmed something. "But then you showed up," she said. Another pause. And then, quieter, And now I don't know which version of me I was supposed to be. I didn't go back, not the next day, not the day after that. I told myself it was simple. She asked, I listened. That's how this works. Clean. Contained. But it didn't feel clean. It felt like leaving a sentence unfinished and pretending it made sense anyway. 3 days later, I was sorting through old receipts in the back of the shop when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Something made me answer. Hi, it's me. Her voice. Quieter than usual. Not controlled this time. Just careful. I stood up without realizing I had. Yeah. There was a pause. I could hear something faint in the background. Maybe traffic, maybe wind. I know I said not to come back, she said. You did. I meant it. I waited. But I need you to. That landed differently. Is something broken? A small exhale on her end. Not exactly. I glanced at the clock, then back at the floor. Okay. She didn't explain more. Just gave me a time. And I went. It wasn't the front desk this time. She met me in one of the smaller offices near the back, the kind no one really uses unless they have to. The lights were on, but dim. Curtains half drawn, cutting the room into uneven shadows. She was standing by the desk when I walked in. No greeting. No small talk. Just a folder in her hand. You came, she said. You asked. She nodded once, like that was enough. For a moment, neither of us moved. It felt different now, not like before, where everything hovered just under the surface. This felt deliberate. I need to show you something, she said. I didn't answer. Just waited. She walked past me, closing the door behind me with a soft click. Not locked. Just closed. Then she placed the folder on the desk and opened it. Inside were photos. Not many. Just a few, slightly worn at the edges like they'd been handled more than they should have. She picked one up, hesitated for a second, then handed it to me. This was a long time ago, she said. I looked down. A man, maybe mid-30s, standing next to her. Younger, but still clearly her. They were close. Not posed. Just naturally leaning into each other like it was automatic. There was something familiar about the way he stood. Not his face exactly. Just something in the posture. The ease. He used to fix things too, she said. I looked up at her. She wasn't watching me. Her eyes were on the photo, like she was seeing it happen again instead of remembering it. Not as a job, she added. Just everything else. I set the photo back on the desk carefully. What happened? She let out a slow breath. He left. The answer was simple. Too simple. But the way her fingers pressed into the edge of the desk told the rest of it. Not suddenly, she continued. That would have been easier. A faint, humorless smile. He just slowly stopped choosing me. I didn't say anything. He'd still show up. Still talk. Still. She stopped herself, shaking her head slightly. But it was different. Like I was already something he used to love. The room felt smaller somehow. So I adjusted, she said. Like people do. I stayed. I told myself it was enough. Her voice didn't break. That wasn't the kind of pain this was. It was quieter than that. And then one day, she added, he didn't come back at all. Silence settled between us. Not heavy, just steady. I glanced at the photo again, then back at her. Why are you showing me this? That was the part one didn't understand. She finally looked at me. Really looked. Because I realized something, she said. Her voice was softer now. Not guarded. Not controlled. Just honest in a way that made it hard to stand still. When you left the other night, she paused, like she needed to choose the next part carefully. I didn't feel relieved, she said. I frowned slightly. I felt like I had just done the same thing to myself again. The words didn't come fast after that. They didn't need to. I stayed where I was, not sure what I was supposed to do with that. Not sure there was anything to do. Her hand moved slightly on the desk, brushing the edge of the photo without picking it up. I don't know if I'm trying to fix that, she said quietly, or repeat it. I held her gaze, and for the first time, I couldn't tell which one I wanted it to be either. We didn't say anything for a while after that. Not because there was nothing to say, just because anything we added felt like it would tip it into something louder than it needed to be. She stayed by the desk, one hand resting near the photos. I stayed where I was, a few steps away, like there was still a line neither of us had agreed to cross. But it didn't feel like distance anymore. It felt like pause. You know, I I said eventually, my voice lower than I expected. You don't have to figure it out all at once. She let out a quiet breath, almost like a tired laugh without the sound. I've been trying to do that for years, she said. Figure it out before I feel it. Does it work? She shook her head. No. A small silence followed. Softer this time. I moved a little closer to the desk, not all the way. Just enough that I didn't have to raise my voice. That thing you said, I added. About repeating it. She looked up at me. I don't think you are, I said. Her expression shifted slightly. Not convinced. Just listening. Feels like it, she said. Yeah, I nodded. But it's different. How? I hesitated. Not because I didn't have an answer, but because I wasn't sure how much of it I was supposed to say out loud. You noticed it, I said finally. Before it finished happening. That landed somewhere in her. Her fingers stilled against the desk. That doesn't mean I won't still ruin it, she said quietly. I let out a small breath. Maybe, but it won't be the same kind of ruin. She held my gaze a second longer than usual, like she was testing that idea. And you? She asked. You're very calm about all this. I'm not, I said. That made her pause. I just don't want to pretend it's nothing, I added. But I also don't want to force it into something it's not. She studied me carefully. And what is it? I glanced down for a second, then back at her. I don't know yet. It wasn't a perfect answer, but it was the only one that didn't feel like a lie. Something in her shoulders softened at that. Not relief. More like permission. To not know, she said. Yeah. Another quiet stretch settled in. Then, slowly, she stepped around the desk. Not rushed. Not hesitant either. Just intentional. She stopped in front of me, close enough now that I could see the slight unevenness in her breathing, the way her lips pressed together like she was holding something back. Or maybe letting something go. We shouldn't rush this, she said. We won't. And we shouldn't pretend it's simple. It's not. She nodded once. Then her hand moved, not uncertain this time. Just careful. She reached out and took mine. Not fully. Just her fingers resting lightly against the back of my hand at first, like she was checking if it was real. I didn't move. Didn't close the gap. Just stayed there long enough for her to decide. And she did. Her fingers slid into mine, slow, almost deliberate, like each inch mattered. It wasn't tight. It wasn't desperate. It was steady, warm, real. Neither of us looked away. This doesn't fix anything, she said quietly. I know. It might make things harder. Probably. Another small pause. But neither of us let go. She exhaled slowly, her forehead dipping just slightly forward, not quite touching me, but close enough that I could feel it. Okay, she whispered. I nodded, barely. Okay. We stayed like that for a moment longer. Not moving. Not deciding anything bigger than what was already happening. And somehow, that felt like enough. It didn't turn into something dramatic after that. No sudden decisions. No clean break from the lives we already had. No moment where everything rearranged itself to make sense. It just continued. Quieter than I expected. I still came to the hotel, but not as often. And not always because something needed fixing. Sometimes there was a real reason. Sometimes there wasn't. Neither of us pointed it out. We didn't rush into anything we couldn't hold. Some days, we barely spoke. Just a look across the desk, a small nod, something passing between us that didn't need words. Other days, we'd find a few minutes in that same back office, not to solve anything, just to sit in the same space without pretending it meant nothing. She didn't become a different person. That's probably the part that mattered most. She was still careful, still measured, still someone who thought things through a second too long. But there were moments now, small ones, where she didn't. Like when she laughed and didn't stop herself halfway. Or when she'd say something honest and not take it back right after. Or the way her shoulders didn't always carry that quiet weight anymore, like she had to hold everything together on her own. It wasn't a transformation, just a shift. And me, I stopped trying to stay on the edges of things. I didn't rush in either. That wasn't what this was. But I stopped leaving before something mattered, just because I knew how it could end. Turns out, knowing the risk doesn't make it less worth stepping into. It just makes you pay attention while you're there. We never labeled it. Not out loud. There were moments where we could have conversations that circled close enough to it. But every time, It felt like forcing a word onto something that was still figuring itself out. And somehow, not naming it made it more honest. Less about what it should be, more about what it actually was. There were still complications. Of course there were. Lives don't just open up clean spaces for something new without pushing back a little. But we didn't pretend those parts didn't exist. We just didn't let them decide everything either. Sometimes that meant stepping back. Sometimes it meant staying anyway. And sometimes it meant sitting in silence, side by side, not fixing anything. Just not walking away. I think about that first night more than I expected to. Not the words I overheard. Not even the almost moment. Just that small, quiet hesitation before either of us knew what this would become. Because that's where it really started. Not with certainty. Not with intention. Just with two people noticing something and not looking away. We didn't ruin it. That's the closest thing to an answer I have. We didn't rush it into something it couldn't hold. We didn't pretend it was simple. We didn't walk away the second it got complicated. And somehow, that was enough to let it become something real. Not perfect. Not permanent, maybe. But real in a way that stayed. Even now. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?